Okay, and moving along. So we will go ahead and get started. This first session is called Laying the Groundwork for an obvious reason. So please make sure that you now have all of those files downloaded. The session agenda, handout 2, the attributes of formative assessment, handout 3, enabling factors supporting formative assessment implementation. These were both from the pre-session that you should have from Blackboard. Handout 4 is fixed and implementation stages interview overview that has just been sent to you. And handout 5, leadership strategies by fix and stage. You should have all of those files now. Okay, if you do not have those, please let me know. Raise your hand using the hand raising button. Okay, let me see if I can push those files out one more time, if that's possible. Okay, so you should have just received those. Please let me know if it still did not work. Okay, so hi, my name is Melissa Finkel. I think I've met most of you in person at some point, or I've exchanged many emails with you. My quick background, I was a Montgomery County English theater teacher. I directed the plays, I coached field hockey, I coached our public speaking team, which is called Forensics, and it's not CSI. I have a background in communications and graphic design, education policy, and I am the primary contact for all things FAME. So if there are specific issues that are not related to your school, please go ahead and still contact me with those. But otherwise, you should be contacting your MSDE point person.
And I'm Arlisa Ledbetter. I'm a former ELA specialist with MSDE. And prior to joining MSDE as well as formative assessment, I was a department chair in Baltimore County Public Schools.
So in addition to the work that we're doing here today, we have a few other things that we are doing that we'll be inviting you to. We have a collaborative work group which will be starting next month. October 6th will be the first one, and it is a work group to discuss all things formative assessment, including all of the tasks that we have acquired, the FAME implementation in schools, and any other research that we want to present. We may periodically ask you and your school to come to one of our collaborative work groups and present on your FAME implementation. So please don't be scared if we ask you to come present. It means that we really love what's going on in your school and we'd love for you to share it. We also will be going to many conferences around the state and a few across the country to present about FAME and talk to people about what we are doing in formative assessment. And we will be acquiring and disseminating formative assessment tasks that your schools can use. They have been acquired by the county. Some of you probably know what's going on about that. Some of you may not have heard anything yet because it's still an ongoing process. So each of the 4 online sessions are designed to support you in your role as a leader. So this session is the first of 4. You, as a group, decided on those 4 sessions and the schedules, and we ask that you be present and participate in all 4 of them. If you cannot, please let us know by responding to our calendar invite. All of these sessions are recorded. They will be on Blackboard, and they will also be on our blog for you to view later. If there's anything in this session that you'd like to share with the rest of your school, we encourage you to do so, or with the rest of your leadership team. And at some point we will be talking to your district office about sustainability in the future, and these would be great tools for you to use to talk about how you're implementing FAME in your school. So we're really focusing in these sessions on your role as a leader and exploring the groundwork for successful implementation of formative assessment in your school's classrooms. So just to introduce yourselves, some of you did this already on the pre-session, but we'd love to do that for this group now. So if you could go ahead and type your name, one hope you have for implementing formative assessment at your school, and one fear you have about implementing formative assessment. I see that we have a few people typing. Let's give you a bit of wait time. Okay, thank you, Shannon. Fear is time. Yes, we completely understand that. And we're hoping that this year with our cohort that can have that COP release time, that time will be less of an issue, but we realize that it will be an issue, especially in later cohorts. Thank you, Scott. Fear, same sort of fear, lack of teacher buy-in. And we'll talk about some of the tools we can use to do so. I think Susan and Peggy are still typing. So we will touch on those as they enter them. Oh, Peggy, you got to make sure that you respond in the main room. So go ahead in the room. But Peggy is with the Lower Eastern Shore Children's Center and J. Louise Carter Center. And she said her fear is, again, time, that we do not have enough time to do this effectively. So we just want to review a few of the components of FAME. There are several mutually reinforcing components of the FAME design, and these involve the leadership support sessions, the facilitators supporting teachers as well through the online learning modules and face-to-face COP meetings, as well as real-time implementation efforts in the classroom. And again, as we've told you, we are here to support you as much or as little as you would like. We call it a menu of support. And Susan just chimed in, fear is that staff will think this is just one more initiative. Yeah. One of the challenges for leaders who may not have participated in the Summer Institute or are not participating in the online modules is to keep the communication flowing across these realms. So the online leadership support sessions, both the pre-session asynchronous and the synchronous webinars, were developed to mirror some of the key knowledge, content, and materials introduced during the online modules and community of practice sessions, because we know that not all of you will be able to complete all of the modules as the teachers are. Because school leaders and teachers are on a parallel track, however, it doesn't mean that everyone will end up at Grand Central Station. So communication will be critical to implementation. The deeper the implementation, the greater the need for communication. So we're encouraging you in this process to keep those lines of communication open. And we're also encouraging you to use the discussion groups, to use the other high school administrators as a resource as you implement. So just to go over our 4 sessions, each of the 4 leadership support sessions includes the asynchronous pre-session and as well as the subsequent synchronous session. So the pre-session and the webinars are how I'm going to refer to them, because asynchronous and synchronous is just too confusing for my mouth and my brain this early in the morning. Each has a different topical focus. So this first session is just the foundations and enabling factors. Session 2 will get into learning goals and success criteria, which was a really exciting thing to look at during the leadership sessions. Session 3 is the learning progressions. And session 4 is descriptive feedback, which we know is really at the core of formative assessments. And so we have this lovely little diagram for you to show you how it will proceed this fall. Each of the 4 sessions is preceded by the pre-session. Then the asynchronous session, which you can complete on your own time schedule, and we will have the next materials up early next week, is designed to support knowledge building and reflection about the key attributes of formative assessment, how they look in practice, and your leadership successes and challenges with implementing these. Pre-session activities, which include postings, viewings, and responding to brief videos of formative assessment in practice and reflective tasks, will typically take a total of 45 to 60 minutes to complete, and will prepare you for discussion about formative assessment implementation during the 90-minute webinar session to follow. At the close of each webinar session, you'll be asked to identify a next action step that makes sense for advancing and supporting formative assessment implementation at your school site. For the subsequent pre-session, you'll be asked to post an artifact and description that illustrates your efforts on that action step. In this way, each webinar session is linked to the next pre-session, and each pre-session prepares you for the following webinar session. So this provides a chain of connected learning experiences to support and sustain your leadership efforts as you work collectively to explore how best to lead the implementation of formative assessment practices at each of your schools. So just a few of the tools that we're going to be using today. Our sessions are designed to be very interactive, allowing you to learn with and from your school leader colleagues. So we'll view video clips during several of our pre-sessions, like this first one, and in synchronous sessions as well. At times we'll break into online discussion groups, take polls, and use the chat function to interact too. You can expect to be busy during these sessions, so plan to put your email and phone messages aside while we work together once a month. You're asked at the end of the first asynchronous pre-session to bring any notes, questions, or issues that surface for you, and the document enabling factors supporting formative assessment implementation. It's important that you bring the particular documents noted at the close of each pre-session as a reference and to support your active participation in each webinar session. Each session also introduces some additional materials which you can find in the file download section, and I pushed to you earlier when we started. These include the session agenda, which describes the learning goals and success criteria for the session, the PowerPoint slides, which I'll push out a little later, handouts, readings, templates that we'll be using during the session. So I referred to the first reading, handout 1.4, and the chart 1.5, which we'll be referencing. You can download these just before or during the start of each session. We strongly recommend maintaining a binder of all session materials for easy reference, particularly since you'll be asked to reference some documents multiple times across sessions. Or if you're a Google Apps for Education school, you can keep a handy little Google folder. So I know that you've probably seen this visual before. An overarching goal of these online leadership support sessions is to help you understand and develop implementation approaches, both within this leadership community of practice and within your own school context. This means continually reflecting and responding to these three questions. Where are we going? Where are we now? And how do we close the gap? You'll see these used to structure the pre-sessions as well as these synchronous webinar sessions. Now let's begin by reviewing the specific learning goals for this session. So these are the targeted goals for session 1, including both the pre-session and this real-time session. I'd like you to think about and type in the chat how these goals relate to your own goals for these sessions. So deepening the understanding of the attributes, developing a more nuanced and contextualized vision for full implementation, building awareness and knowledge of factors that enable successful implementation, and anticipating and addressing challenges to leading and supporting teachers. So go ahead and address how these relate to your own goals for these sessions in the chat room, not private chat if possible. Thank you, Shannon. We want to meet teachers where they are and help them move to where they want to be. And I apologize for my egregious misspellings in the chat room. And then Susan, my goals are to assist staff and administration with their practice. That's great. Peggy, my goal is to have my staff understand how formative assessment will effectively improve our students' achievement, and that successful implementation does not have to take more of their time. That's great, thank you. And Scott, I see you're typing, so we'll move on to the next page and reflect on what you write. Here's our success criteria, which we know are very important. So our success criteria, you'll know that you're being successful when you can do these things. Recognize and discuss the attributes of formative assessment in the classroom. Describe the extent to which the attributes are evident in your school. Identify factors that will enable successful implementation at your school. And identify leadership practices that can strengthen your school's current stage of implementation. So go ahead and type something that resonates as critical criteria for you. Something that connects with your expectations and hopes for this session. And go ahead and type that in the chat box for us. Thank you, Scott. I want my staff to become comfortable with formative assessment and learn how to be effective in utilizing it so that it doesn't feel like an extra burden. So go ahead and just give me a few examples of the success criteria that really reflects as critical for you in your school. If it's something that resonates with you, whether you hope that you can recognize and discuss the attributes, all of these little details that may be really important to you as success criteria. Susan, that's great. I want staff to understand they may already be using formative assessment, but to understand about the non-grading and the feedback. I think the video during summer leadership with Dylan Williams talking about how feedback tied to ego is not really used is kind of a sticking point with a lot of our schools. I want to be able to reflect on and celebrate what staff are already doing well. That's great. And we've heard a lot of talk about celebrations along the way. So just to give you an idea of the agenda, this is the itinerary that we're going to use to get to the learning goals and success criteria. This is also in the handout. So we're going to proceed from the introductions and overview, talk about where we're headed, talk about where we are now and how we can close the gap, and also looking ahead. So using that cycle of formative assessment. And I'll touch upon Peggy's comment. I want them to be able to identify the effective strategies of formative assessment they already use and figure out how to make it better, and that's great. So, as Alice said, in Alice in Wonderland, if you don't know where you are going, any road will get you there. So the first thing we want to do is to reconnect to some of the pre-session tasks by exploring and building on some of your individual reflections. Our aim within this leadership community is to build a more specific vision for what formative assessment implementation in the classroom might look like. So, our first challenge is to begin to articulate a full, sorry, let me go back just a sec, a full vision of implementation of formative assessment. So what will it look like? What will we see and hear when we walk into classrooms, when we walk into all classrooms in our school? So just want to touch upon some of the comments made in the asynchronous pre-session. We have some really great comments about the video before we get started. So one thing that we heard was that students are talking to each other, not the teacher, and that is something that really resonated. So students are talking to each other, not the teacher, in their peer assessment. And then we heard students need to be able to give authentic feedback, and that was from Shannon, so thank you for that. And a point that Scott made was that when you're able to explain a concept correctly to someone else, you own that knowledge, and that really resonated. So to do this, we're going to draw on the video clip that you responded to. We're going to review the video together and a few of the comments that I just shared, and then we'll break into small groups to share our personal visions and begin to shape a collective vision for full implementation of formative assessment. So what I'm going to do now, just to preview for you, is take you on a web tour to the video. If it does not work, it is housed on our blog, and that link is here. And you also have it in MSDE Blackboard. So we're going to go through this together. Hopefully it'll work. And you'll see that all of the materials for this session are also on our blog. So I believe that you're probably going to have to scroll down a bit and press play on your own if it does not work for you automatically.
Formative assessment is not just a set of tricks for running things a bit better in classrooms. It's actually revolutionary in opening up, making problematic the way teachers relate to their pupils and the way pupils feel and see themselves as learners.
So from what I'm seeing on other screens, it might not be playing. If it is playing, please raise your hand. If you are seeing the video, please raise your hand.
Passionate about trying to promote the sort of classrooms where children get learning experiences that really take them forward and help them not just with their learning that's taking place now, but the future ways that they learn. Schools across the country are facing the challenge of finding effective ways to assess the progress of their students. In this program, two of the country's leading authorities on formative assessment, Paul Black and Chris Harrison, authors of the influential pamphlet Working Inside the Black Box, outline the principles that underpin their approach to assessment in secondary education.
The key feature is that the teacher finds ways of helping the student to be active in the classroom and helping the student to speak out and express their ideas. Until that happens, the teacher doesn't know what's needed. He might just go on teaching and telling people things, but he may miss completely the fact that they misunderstand, that they're thinking about something else, and so on.
In formative assessment, there's many different areas that teachers and learners need to work on. It all comes down to feedback, really. Feedback is absolutely vital, and feedback will occur if...
Is it working or not? That's fine. Yeah. It's fine, I just need it. Go ahead and raise your hand when you are done with the video. We'll give you about another minute or minute and a half. And you can start thinking about the question. Okay, I'll give you just about another 30 seconds or so to finish the video. And then we will move on to our first breakout room. Okay, so we are going to move into breakout rooms. So in order to add specificity to our collective visions, we're going to break into small groups to discuss these 3 questions based on our video review. So our 3 questions are, what is our personal vision for full implementation? So what will we see and hear among FAME participants? What will students be doing? What are the common elements of our vision? excuse me, and what needs further learning and discussion. So what aspects of our group vision are most unclear and what aspects are not shared. I'm going to move you into small groups. Please start your work by identifying someone to serve as facilitator, timekeeper, and recorder or reporter. They will record or report directly on the whiteboard. You can use the typing tool, which I find to be easiest, or you can attempt to use the handwriting tool. Recorders, please capture those notes, and you're going to provide a 1-minute summary of your group's responses to questions 2 and 3. Your small group conversation will be limited to 10 minutes, so the facilitator should move the discussion along to make sure the recorder can report out on questions 2 and 3. And the moderators will jump into the rooms just to help move it along. Okay, well, you've got a room 2. I've got a room 1.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm going to try one more time. Can you hear me?
Okay, hopefully everybody has returned to the main room. I'm going to ask for some share outs now. Suzanne is going to go ahead and share out for our group, and I believe Arlisa is going to share out for the other group. So Suzanne, why don't you go ahead and share our summary of our vision for full implementation and some of the common elements. Okay, Suzanne, go ahead and share out for us if you can. Make sure that you press talk again.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. We talked about the getting of the data and the using of the data and the feedback for our students, buy-in for staff. Some staff are some people said that their staff has bought in already, and some of us said that's still baby steps for us. Our vision is for this to be fully implemented, and to see how the students react too, how their their growth in this whole process. At my school, we're just starting, so I'm not even sure where to go. I'm hoping that more staff buy in, and that eventually I can't wait to see how the students react and how when they feel more empowered and buy in for their own learning. I don't know if we really did share a lot of what was going on, except that we're all I think some of us are at different stages. I mean, we haven't even had our first group meeting yet to pick dates, so we're really at the beginning.
Okay, great. And I think Arlisa is going to share out for the other group. Thank you, Suzanne.
In our group, Anne mentioned using assessments to know where students are, and I think in doing so, teachers will know how to plan lessons according. And the need for common assessments across various departments and just being better versed in assessments in general.
Okay, great. So now we're thinking about our vision for our full implementation, you know, as sort of a destination where we want to get to. So say 200 West Baltimore Street, where we are right now. So how do we get there? So getting there really depends on where we are right now. And as Suzanne said, you know, her school's at the very beginning. Schools are in all different places right now. So getting to West Baltimore is going to depend on a few things: our current location, where we're starting from, and the tools or resources that we have moving from one place to the other. For formative assessment, we could translate these to say, what's our current context, and what systems, structures, and supports can we draw on to help us move toward our destination? Unless we're familiar with the answers to these two questions, we'll not be able to map out a path to full implementation of formative assessment at our schools. So let's connect once again to the pre-session work. So during the pre-session, you had the option to read about and complete a questionnaire about enabling factors. I said this was optional because we had a lot of activities for you to turn around in a short amount of time. This is also one of the files that was pushed to you, called Enabling Factors, and I believe the title is, oh no, let's see. I don't know if it was pushed to you. I'll make sure it is right now. It was not. You should have that from the asynchronous pre-session. So there are 9 factors that are associated with higher degrees of implementation of effective formative assessment in this study done in Syracuse, suggesting that if attention sustained on the development of these factors, getting to full implementation with formative assessment may be easier. So while each of you will most likely be taking a different road, we do want to engage with each other about the road you're taking and why, so you can be informed by each other's thinking and experiences. So please take a few minutes to go ahead and reread and complete the graphic organizer to reflect on the extent to which your school has these enabling factors in place. I'm going to go ahead and push this to you guys one more time. When you've completed the questionnaire, please go ahead and raise your hand, and then we're going to complete a poll so that we can see where we all are in relation to the enabling factors. So you should have that file, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to complete that and raise your hand when you are done. So as you're working, if you want to go ahead and identify which of the enabling factors is most fully underway in your school, and it'll be an A, B, or C response. So which is the most fully developed or underway at your school? Okay, so ignoring those of us who didn't respond because we don't work in the school, it seems that B is the most prevalent response. So we are most fully underway with our knowledge and use of principles of standards-based education, which is wonderful. So moving on to the opposite poll, which is the least underway? Okay, so let's go ahead and publish those. So it seems that A is the least underway with all of our schools. So knowledge and use of educational data. We realize that is a practice that is something that we all need to work on. So what we're going to do is, I think because we have a small enough group now, we'll go ahead and discuss in our room as it is. Let's see. So which of the 9 enabling factors have you focused on the most in earlier school improvement efforts, and what was the effort? And then which 1 to 2 factors, if strengthened further, would help to facilitate successful formative assessment implementation at your school? What might you do next? Let's see. We're going to have you do this in the chat because we have a small enough group. So if you do have the capability of talking through the microphone, please go ahead and do so. I think that's pretty much Susan. If not, let's go ahead and start our discussion. Which of the 9 enabling factors have you focused on the most in earlier school improvement efforts? And what was that effort?
Well, we did a lot of standards-based improvement, you know, content and performance of standards. So we focused a lot on that district-wide for years. We've also focused a lot on data systems, and we do have the data systems in part. But the only thing that I think we still need assessment literacy. That was a big wow for us, you know. So I think that's where we are, you know. The knowledge and use of the systems is still an area of, I think we're partially there. It wasn't as weak as I thought it was when talking to other teachers, you know, just about this when I was doing this survey the other day. So I think that's where we are.
Okay, that's great. Seems like we have a few people writing on our whiteboard, so that's great. And thank you guys for being so flexible, because it's always a lesson to use Blackboard Collaborate. You always learn. Okay, so we have Anne chiming in. We worked on content and performance standards with the implementation of Common Core. Great. Seems like also we're at the point where a lot of you, obviously, have agreement on the need for formative assessment, so that's great. PLCs and collaboration. We've worked on collaborative teacher process and support. We developed PLCs, and they've steadily gained teacher support and led to more teacher collaboration. Fantastic. So it seems that collaborative teacher processes and support, we obviously have building commitment and leadership because you're here, and we're going to help you expand the district level leadership commitment as well. So it seems like we should probably move on to what factors, if strengthened further, would help to facilitate successful formative assessment implementation at your school. So what are some of those details that you really think need to be strengthened? And Susan, if you want to go ahead and chat while other people type their responses in, that would be great.
Well, I think we have the data systems here. We do use data daily, you know, especially with our testing, because we do have, you know, the benchmarks and everything. So we have that side. But I think it's just the assessment literacy. I think teachers need to use it better and to know more about how to use it. And I'm hoping that with the formative, you know, so to me that's a need to make sure that they really understand how to use the assessment literacy, and also for them to know that there's more of a need for that. The other place where I thought that they really need to work on is the agreement on the need for formative assessment. They know that they need a formative assessments, but I don't think they know how to use them right. So we're kind of there. like there's a need, but now how do we do it correctly?
Right. And seeing needs to be strengthened, assessment literacy, and then teachers then utilizing the data. Yep. I think we need to understand what assessment can do to improve student performance. Yeah. We need to go beyond the judgment in assessment to the tool, and that's great. I know in a lot of the videos we showed during leadership, we really highlighted those details about, you know, all comments should be related to the success criteria, so that there is nothing left that's really judgmental for the students, because that is a concern. Okay. So we're going to talk about closing the gap now. So now that we've developed an idea of sort of where we're headed, where we're currently in our journey, our next step is to consider what we need to do in order to strengthen our current work and move towards the next stage of implementation. So we're going to be exploring the document Fixin' Implementation Stages Overview. You have that in the download section. It is also going to be familiar because we discussed this at summer leadership. I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Susan, if you don't mind. So if you want to go ahead and pull up that document, so that is 1.4 Fixin' Implementation Stages Overview. There are 3 methods to support the use of programs in real-world settings in order to achieve positive outcomes for students and their families. So letting it happen, helping it happen, and making it happen. In order to make it happen, that team must navigate the complexity involved in new ways of doing things. So as we know, change is a process. It's not a single event. Implementation occurs in stages, and someone must plan and negotiate the journey through these stages to engage and support practitioners and administrators and effectively launch the work. The implementation team members ensure that those doing the work have the skills and support structures needed to feel confident in using innovation as intended. So starting with an awareness that implementation occurs in stages allows us for that intentional planning for the change process. So when we pay attention to the stages of implementation, we can reduce that wasted time and resources, match our activities to the stage and increase the likelihood of moving successfully through each stage and on to the next stage, prepare for the activities and challenges that we'll face in the next stage, and increase the likelihood of sustained and improved use of educational practices. So we encourage you to read this on your own. We did go over this during the summer, but this is just a nice overview for you in the interest of time. So how can we close the gap? So research suggests that it can take from 2 to 4 years to fully and successfully operationalize an evidence-based program practice or effective educational innovation. In the summer we talked a lot about 3 to 5 years. We're really at the beginning stages of this implementation process. So according to Fixin's model, which is described in handout 4, the process includes 4 stages that can lead to long-term survival, sustainability, and continued effectiveness of any innovation. Stages are not linear, and each one does not have a crisp beginning or end. For example, there are times when an organization will move among stages due to changes in staff, funding, leadership, or unsuccessful attempts at employing the innovation with high fidelity. We know this happens in education. There are key components and processes to pay attention to during each of the stages. These can guide a systematic and intentional approach for managing system change and building sustainability for the new initiative. Take a minute now to download, open, and skim pages 3 to 5 of handout 4 to gain a quick view of the first stages of implementation and to consider which stage best represents where your school is in relation to implementation of formative assessment. If you want to go ahead and raise your hand when you're done and we can move on. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on. I think in the interest of time, we're going to just sort of skim on this. We talked about this a lot during summer leadership, which for some of you was very recent. So I don't want to sort of repeat the same things over and over. But I want you to go ahead and take a look at the handout 5, Leadership Strategies by Fix and Stage, which describes some key considerations for the first phases of FAME implementation. Having been through Summer Institute sessions and the first online module session, most of your schools are probably engaged in the exploration and adoption stage on page 1, or the program installation stage, page 2 at this time. Your school may be further along, and wherever you are is perfectly fine. I just want to highlight on this slide that these stages are presented to show several things. So the first column shows the time frame when the stage is likely to occur for FAME implementation. If it is not when it's occurring for you, yet again, that is perfectly fine. We are all in very different places. The second column reflects the questions that many teachers may well be asking at this time. You may have noticed other questions that teachers may be asking as well. The third column notes some leadership practices that can support this stage of implementation, generally speaking, meaning for any given implementation effort. And then the final column provides more specific examples of leadership practices that are useful for supporting the stage of formative assessment implementation in particular. So please use this tool as you are progressing. I encourage you to share this with your other administrators and your leadership team so that you can support your teachers as they are going through. So I'd like to just go ahead and do this as another full group. You should probably have an idea of this already, but what stage of implementation is your school in? What challenges are emerging for you? What support do teachers need at this point? And what leadership strategies and practices might you use to strengthen your current status and move implementation toward the next stage? So if you'd like to go ahead and respond in the chat, if you want to talk, or if you want to go ahead and respond on this lovely whiteboard I have just pasted here for you. So which stage of implementation is your school in? What challenges are emerging? And I think we've pretty much covered the fact that time and buy-in are issues. So if there's any other issues that are not related to time and buy-in, now would be the time to address them. What support do teachers need? And what leadership practices might strengthen your current status and move implementation on? So we'll go ahead and take a few minutes for you to respond on the whiteboard or to go ahead and speak. Shannon, I'm not sure if you have the capability to talk through your phone because it seems like you're connected via phone. If you're able to do that, that would be great. Keep on writing if you're writing. It'd be great if you write your name, your last name or school with your contribution. So we see that Anne in Cecil County. By the way, this is a very geographically diverse group. Anne in Cecil County at Rising Sun. We are in the installation stages. We have a lot of teachers involved, so keeping everyone informed and monitoring their progress is a challenge. Northern High School, which is in Calvert County. We're still in the exploration adoption stage. We have the team, so we're going towards installation. Same as introduced. Scott, we talked about where we want to go. Okay, so Scott is with Hannah Moore, which is not far from us here in Reisterstown, Maryland. We're very much in the beginning stages. We met with teachers at the start of this week to go over what FAME is. I am having some issues trying to maximize this. We talked about where we want to go with this and what the teachers would need to do. Great. It looked like Susan was writing, but she just disappeared. And Susan, okay, there we go. And Shannon is with Liberty High School, and that is in Carroll County. Okay. We have the team. FAME was introduced at a faculty meeting at the beginning of the school year. Great. All right. I think Shannon's writing right now. So we're going to I'm going to ask you to stop and consider, given where you're going, where you are now, and the possible responses and practices you can employ, what is one concrete step that you will commit to taking between now and next session? So one concrete step to move FAME forward in your school. Please type that in the chat box. You've got to love Gary Larson comics. So one concrete step, and this will tie into what you're about to do next. Thank you, Anne. Make the schedule for meeting and procure substitutes for COP. I'll also do more research on assessments in general. Okay? That's great, and we can help you with that. If it is a need, we will help. Meeting to set up dates for our COP and more information to all staff at the next faculty meeting. That's great. I see Scott's still writing, so we'll give him a second. So the reason that we were asking you to do that, there we go, meet individually, the individual teachers that I have concerns over their buy-in so that I can understand and address their concerns, hopefully help them more towards embracing what we're doing. Not an easy task. No, it is not, and we admire you for that step, Scott. So what we're asking you to do, sort of your homework that you're going to be completing at the end of each leadership session, is to respond to at least the 3 items shown in bold. So for those of you who are Google Apps for Ed schools, I just pasted the link. We're also going to have it on Blackboard and on the blog. We encourage you to, if you are Google Apps for Ed school, copy this and save it. And I'm going to send out an email explaining how to do that because I am a Google guide here and I know that not everybody is as tech savvy. So that you can continuously update this, and we ask that you share it with us. So this is an action planning tool that you're going to use each time. So number 1, number 2, and number 6 we ask that you work on after this session and that you actually follow through with. So name an immediate goal for the implementation and support of formative assessment at your school. Record 1 or 2 specific actions that you'll commit to doing prior to the next leadership session to advance that goal. So, you know, getting the calendar, talking to those teachers that you're concerned about, all of those steps are fantastic. And finally, to think now about what might be clear evidence of the actions you pursued. So, you know, we're always asking for proof of, you know, of what teachers have done, especially with SLOs, show us your artifacts. We're asking for the same thing from you. So if this is something that you commit to, how can we see that that actually happened in the school? And the pre-session guide for session 2 offers some suggestions to get you started thinking about this, and that will be posted by Monday afternoon at the latest. For example, some early evidence of your efforts might include a schedule of the COPs for the year, like most of you have said, which is fantastic. An annotated faculty or team meeting agenda highlighting teachers' learning opportunities with formative assessment. Notes from informal check-ins with teachers regarding their initial experiences in the FAME online course and planned actions based on feedback. Leadership team meeting minutes documenting development of common understandings and consistent messages related to formative assessment. A summary of leadership team responses to the Enabling Factors survey. That would be great if you disseminated it to your entire leadership team and had them go through it. And other evidence of implementation progress that you've collected. You're going to be asked in the pre-session work for session 2 to post and describe a piece of evidence showing progress on your goal, an artifact. The other section items you'll complete on your own later. So just to give you a preview, and in the interest of time since we started a bit late, so session 2 talks about learning goals and success criteria, and that is October 10th from 9 to 10:30 a.m. So by then we asked you to complete your action plan and related tasks, complete today's session evaluation, which I will be posting in the chat, and I also will be emailing out afterwards. And please do complete that evaluation. We use this information for the next session so that we can adapt to your needs. And just posted it. Sorry, and our next session will include viewing and commenting on a video pertaining to teachers planning for formative assessment, reflecting on the extent to which teachers in your school use particular unit and lesson planning practices, returning to the enabling factors, and remember, please set aside approximately an hour to complete these tasks between now and October 10th. So please go ahead and complete the action planning link. Take some time to give us feedback on the session, and I will send a reminder email out again, hopefully by the end of the day today, reminding you about the session evaluation and letting you know that the links will be out Monday afternoon at the very latest. Are there any questions for the good of the group before we go and have a wonderful rest of the school day? If you have a question, please go ahead and type it in the chat. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to working with your schools. And I believe it's pretty much just our Lisa and I working with your schools because we are the secondary level specialists. And please, if you have any questions, concerns along the way, let us know. If you'd like us to come out to your school for your first COP or afterwards or before, please just be in contact and let us know because we are here to support you. Thank you. Have a great day.